Hi guys, welcome to our final week of our research study. This week we're just going to we're going to do a summary of everything that we've talked about, and I also want to share some things that I found interesting as I was reading through some of your surveys with your interactions and stuff. And then at the very end, we'll take a final survey so I can collect more data and finish out my thesis. So I appreciate you guys participating, but let's get through this first. To start, I put this quote back on the summary slide because I thought it was super important and reiterated everything we've been doing for the past 6 weeks. You can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. And that's really what we've been doing. So we started out week 1 by talking about self-care. And don't forget, self-care is any action or deliberate act that you do to help your mental state or to improve your happiness. And I think that that's something that you've all made a conscious effort with in the past 6 weeks. There's different types of self-care. There's physical, which most of you found was the one that was most neglected. Spiritual, emotional, and then there's also social. And social I thought was super interesting because many of you reported that it was the most stimulated for you as a teacher during the day. But many of you also found ways that self-care was like reaching out to family members and being social in a different way. And so I thought that that was super interesting and that your self-care was still a social aspect that you chose. You just changed the medium in which you chose to participate in it. And that seemed to help some of you. So that was super interesting to me because a lot of times the research I saw was that if it was stimulated, people didn't want it. They wanted to work on something else. So interesting. Another interesting thing I noticed is that a lot of you chose to set boundaries with that social. And instead of engaging in the physical, which you thought was most neglected, you chose to engage or to limit the social. And by limiting the social, that helped you as well. And so that for a lot of you was like closing your classroom door to make sure that you were prepared for the day, having your own quiet time, your own reflection time. Or even just leaving the school building and setting that boundary, that physical boundary of I'm not here and I need to step away. But the number one thing that was the most challenging, and I think this is why physical didn't get thrown back in, is time. Time was just, there's never enough of it. And you guys are so busy throughout the day taking care of so many people that when you do finally find time, there's normally something else you can be working on to get ahead. And so that was a lot that a lot of you noted. And so I thought it was interesting that self-care wasn't just adding something in, it could be also removing something and setting that boundary for yourself. So remember that as you kind of go forward and take care of yourself, is that maybe just setting the boundary is enough to take care of you. Mindfulness and meditation we talked about in week 2. Mindfulness is just paying attention to what is currently happening in the present moment, versus meditation is the technique you're using to bring something to the forefront of your mind. The things that were most used were breathing exercises, and a lot of you noted how it helped stress and anxiety kind of melt away. Some of you even noted that by keeping your hands busy with the figure 8 breathing, or by keeping your mind busy on like counting breaths, like the count in and the count out, kept you from having wandering thoughts and kept you from having to stress about other things that were on your to-do list. And so it's something that doesn't take a lot of time because I know that that's something that we always note as an issue, but it also has some benefits. You guys have noted some benefits. So the challenges that you guys all noted were time, which is going to be something that probably shows up on most of these slides, and just remembering to do it, remembering that, hey, I need to be in the moment. I need to take a second for myself. It doesn't take a lot of time. It's just that remembering piece of how can I take care of me. Building relationships is what we talked about in week 3. We talked about it as we wanted to be more than just our student relationship, but we also noted that the student relationship was super important. So many of you made the conscious effort to go above and beyond and take one step further with your students. And so You talked about interests with them. You kind of checked in with them and were looking at different events around the school and saying, hey, I noticed there was a soccer game last night. How did you play? Like, or hey, I know you guys have a band concert coming up. When is it? Some of you would choose to go, and others of you would just ask about it, and that was okay. You felt like that really helped you make a connection with your students and build that rapport and relationship with them. This other bullet point I thought was super intuitive. I think that the Plus One initiative is something that is very difficult to initiate, but I think it is something that is so beneficial to students. And when it came up in the research, it just made me really happy. Just making one more meaningful comment. So instead of just being like, yeah, sounds good, and moving on, making that comment more meaningful to say, yes, I understand. I'm really glad this happened. And expressing that feeling towards your students and letting them to see you as more than just a teacher, as a human. And I just thought it was a really good way to start doing that and to start building that rapport with your students. It's just hard, again, to remember. And that was the challenge, is that consistency and finding that meaningful piece to continue to add. Again, building relationships. We talked about that social aspect and doing small acts of kindness for your coworkers or even your friends, calling and talking with friends. That was another rapport that was noted to be really beneficial. The benefits of this that were noted were enjoy making others feeling appreciated and cared for, enjoying, like, your students, they even feel appreciated and seen when you make that a little bit more of a conscious effort to go towards them. The challenges, and this I think is really part of COVID, but I think is also seen in a lot of schools too, is that some teachers had noted that they were kind of uncomfortable reaching out to their administration because they already felt their administration had a lot on their plate. They're worried about passing rates and failing rates with COVID and getting student engagement and the different learning formats. And so they didn't feel like they really wanted to add anything to the administrator's plate, which is a valid point and something that I think was super, that I was glad was brought up. So just remember that they're there for you. Even if you feel like you're adding to their plate, they are still there for you. And so maybe there's a better time to reach out, maybe not at a grading period or at like a progress report. Or maybe there's, maybe not this semester, but maybe next year if things calm down a little bit, that still try to build that rapport. The next week we talked about reflection, and the reflection, it really just allows for growth. And it's hard because you don't want to be too critical, and that's kind of like why I did reflection first, because I think teachers are really good at finding ways to improve. That's just the way that the culture has been built. And then the following week we did self-compassion and how we can find ways that we can celebrate ourselves. And so I think reflection and self-compassion kind of go together in that regard, and that yes, we need to find ways that we can improve and reflect, but we also need to find ways that we have improved and we need to celebrate that. And so reflection allows for facts to be gathered and allow you to make clear decision making and kind of reflect on, how did that go? Could I do better? Was it successful? And if it was successful, let's celebrate that. But it also allows you to see the good in the events, and that not everything is 100% good or bad. It can teeter either way, and there can always be more good, but sometimes we choose to focus on the bad. And then the challenge this week was really just the timing of the research study as the winter storm kind of came through the southern region, where it affected schools, it affected teachers, it affected power, it affected numerous states, it affected more things than we could have ever imagined. And so I just really encourage you guys to reflect on that week and how challenging it was for you, but also how challenging it could have been for a student. Some of them don't have water, some of them don't have power, some of them are anxious to get back to school, and just realizing that you're that adult that they're going to see and how you can help them. And then reflecting on that week and say, okay, what can I do to help? And so when you do get time and you do kind of get your own life settled, please, please, please reflect back on that. Self-compassion was our final one, which is the one we talked about last week. And it kind of combines a lot of these. It combines mindfulness, it combines reflection, and connectedness, that building relationships piece. It talks about being in the moment and saying, okay, I'm going to be in this moment and I'm going to make sure that I'm doing everything I can in order to be mindful. It's talking about reflecting on the good as much as we do the bad, that balancing act that is so hard for teachers, because even in your evaluations, you guys have been told, like, how can you improve this lesson? There's always a better way to improve this. How can you reach another student? Instead of just saying, hey, that was a really good lesson, like, pat on the back, kudos to me. And then asking for help if you need it is another challenging thing, because again, those evaluations kind of are pressing. And so just being comfortable doing that and saying, hey, I need help. Forgiving yourself and celebrating growth while still learning. Again, another piece of that reflection that we talked about. Without reflection, you can't grow. And so we need that reflection piece in order to grow. And extending the same kindness to yourself as you do others. Teachers are so kind. You guys forgive students every day. You forgive, and you guys are in a service industry. And so you can't do that without a kind heart. And so I think sometimes we are self-critical of ourselves in order to extend that kindness. You're like, oh, I could have done more. But sometimes you need to give yourself a break too, and you need to forgive yourself and say, hey, I'm not perfect. And I think by doing that and being better at that and owning that, you get to be the example for your students, and you get to teach them that, which then comes full circle with mental health and how people and kids learn from those around them. And I think many of you had noted how sometimes you're the adult that kids see the most during the day. And so I think this picture depicts it pretty well, in that, you know, even when you think they're not looking, they're looking, and they're looking to mimic you. And so as much pressure as that is, you also have to realize that I can't beat myself up, because then what's going to happen when they make a mistake? And I'm kind to them about it, but I need to continue to be kind to myself about it. And owning that. And I think that that's very powerful. So, and then basically, like, this week, what's your homework? Because we've just kind of summarized everything we've been through and how it can help mental health programs for teachers. So the first thing I need you guys to do is take the final survey. That link is in the email. And then it's a longer survey. It does ask some demographic questions that are general, but nothing that would be able to identify you. It's just to help me, like, with some research stuff and connecting things. Please make sure you answer every question in its entirety. Some of the questions have like 2 parts. It's like, what was most beneficial? And then the next question is how. And that's combined in one question. So please make sure you're answering both in order to fulfill the research requirement. And then after you're done with that survey, you guys are going to get an email from me later, and I'll explain it in the email as well, but you'll get an email from me later to verify all your responses, and then that will be my last email, unless you have any other questions after that. But I do need you to verify that all your responses were recorded correctly. And then moving forward, what do? We'll continue to take care of you. Please use this research and this, like, your participation in my thesis as a growing moment, and say, hey, I really need to work on this, and I need to take time for me, and I need to continue to set my boundaries. I really do encourage you to continue to advocate for yourself just like you advocate for your students, and I think that it can be very powerful. Remember, taking care of yourself, meditation, mindfulness tools maybe that you've developed. Build your relationships, not just with students. A lot of you are really good at that. Also with your coworkers and your administration. Even if you think that they have too much, reach out. Just say, hey, a small act of kindness can go a long way with them too. Reflection, just reflecting. I think you guys are pretty good at that and everything that's gone on. And as a teacher, you guys are always looking for ways to improve. And then self-compassion. Just really, really be kind to yourself as you are to your students. If you guys have any questions or you have any need moving forward, please do not hesitate to email me. I'm here for you guys in any way possible. So my email is right there. I think you also have it because you've been getting my email. So please don't be afraid to use it. And then lastly, I just want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to help me complete my thesis. But I also want to say thank you because I think each one of you is making an impact bigger than you would ever be able to imagine. And sometimes you don't see it on a day to day basis. Many times you're not even around to witness it later in life. In fact, as I was presenting my thesis plan to my classmates, there's 30 of us, and including my professor, they all had a teacher in mind that were like, yeah, I could see how, my favorite teacher could benefit from this. And so even years and years outside of high school, even after graduating college and going into a master's program, you continue to make impacts. And that's so powerful, but that's also a lot of pressure. So please put yourself first and just thank you for being you. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great week and look out for a couple emails from me, and I will let you know when it's the last one. So have a good day.